Parshas Balak. You may think that this is somewhat arcane, but I wanted to raise the issue of the anthropology of hand clapping. What is the origin of clapping your hands? Where do we get that idea from? When do we clap hands? We clap hands for entertainment, for rhythm during music. We clap our hands when we want to show approval. That's called applause. When else is hand clapping used?
You see, like when you go to a good performance or something like that, you clap your hands?
Yeah, that's applause, right?
Oh, sorry.
You want to take the attention of somebody.
Yeah, you want to get someone's attention, you just want to make noise. Biblically, clapping hands was also used as a sign of mourning, believe it or not. So, mourning. So I'm going to show you some examples. One of the prime examples is from this week's Parsha, Parshas Balak. What happens after Bilam, after several attempts, tries to curse the Jews and is unsuccessful, and he ends up blessing the Jews instead? So who hired Bilam? There's a king whose name was Balak. That's the name of the Parsha. And Balak is getting increasingly more and more frustrated with Bilam. So at the ultimate moment of frustration, the pasuk says in Perek Chaf Daled pasuk Yud, this is source number 1, Vayichar af Balak el Bilam vayispok es kapav. That Balak gets upset with Bilam and vayispok et kapav. What does that mean?
It's not like that. It's not like that. Because
what does lispok et kapav mean?
I don't know. It's like maybe
Lispok et kapav. That's lispok et hapanim. Lispok et kapav means to go like this. It's just to clasp the hands like this. Also, we have in Sefer Eicha, Safaku alayich kapayim kol ovrei darech. We'll read in Eicha in a few weeks that those who pass by you, O Zion or O Jerusalem, clap their hands together as a sign of astonishment or mourning. Right? Sharaku vayaniu rosham. They shake their heads. Al bas Yerushalayim, for the daughter of Zion. They can't believe what's happened. Also in the book of Eov, talking about a person who's suffering, the observer of this person who's in the midst of suffering is Yispok Alemo Kapemo, that he'll clap his hands over him just because he's so upset. He can't believe what he's seeing. And of course we have the very famous Midrash Tanchuma, which indicates to us that clapping the hands, grabbing the hands like that is a sign of great upset, is like an expression of upset. Where do you see it? This is a famous story in the Tanchuma, which tells us the story of Lemech. We won't read it inside because of time constraints, but the Medrash, you've probably heard this Medrash. I think I heard it the first time when I was in first grade. Lemech was a 7th generation descendant of Cain, and Lemech was out hunting for his son, with his son, for food. They were hunting. So the Medrash asks, "V'ketzad nehera Cain?" How was Cain eventually killed? So he was wandering because of the curse that was placed upon him, that you'll be a wanderer your entire life. And Lemech, who was his 7th generation descendant, remember people were living really long lives, so Lemech is 7th generation descendant and he's blind. So he's going out to hunt with his son, and his son holds his hand and leads him along. And his son told him whenever he saw a deer or some other kind of animal of prey, he would say, "Okay, father, shoot your arrow," right? And then the father would shoot his arrow, and hopefully he would bag the game. So his son is leading him through the forest, and all of a sudden they see this creature running, and the son says, "Father, shoot, I see an animal." So Lemech shoots, and lo and behold, it's Cain. Oh. And Lemech ends up killing his great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. That's the Medrash Tanchuma tells us. But then the Medrash continues and it says that Ra'a oso tinok merachok harug v'keren b'mitzcho. Amar lo Lemech avi harei demus adam harug v'keren b'mitzcho. So he realizes the child runs over to the dead carcass, he sees that it's a human being who has a horn in his forehead, because that was the mark of Cain, according to this medrash, was that he had a horn. That's why this child thought that it was an animal and not a human being. Amar le lemech vaili zekenihu. So Lemech says, oh my gosh, this is my grandfather. So tafach shtei yadav bacharata. So he goes like this because he's so upset. Now Lemech was this hulking giant of a man, and his son is right there. His son is like this little boy standing right in front of him. And Lemech goes, oi! And what happens? He squashes his son. And Nebuch, he kills his son 5 minutes after he kills his great-great-grandfather. This is what the Medrash says. Tafach shtei yadav bacharata. He's so upset that he claps his hands together. V'naga berosh hatinok v'harago b'shogeg. And he kills his son by accident. So he's killed 2 people, and this is to fulfill the pasuk, because Lemech, the pasuk, it's a very cryptic pasuk. It says, Vayomer Lemech linashav. Adav etzila sheman koli nishay lemech ha'azena imrati ki ish harakti lefitzi v'yeled lechaburati. So he says to his wives, he says, don't blame me. Everything was an accident. Ki ish harakti lefitzi v'yeled lechaburati. I've killed a man through my weapon and a child through my infliction of injury. He's referring to his grandfather Cain and to his son, this little boy. Okay. So, fine. So you see that clapping is a sign of an expression of upset, an expression of mourning.
Is that why we don't clap on Shabbos?
No, that's not the reason. Hold that thought. It says in Yeshaya that, and in other places in Tanakh, that clapping can also be a sign of great pleasure and a sign of great approval. For example, Kivisimcha seitzeu Uvishalom tuvalun, from chapter 55 in Isaiah. With joy you shall go out, and with peace you shall come back. Heharim v'hagvaot yivtzechu lifnechem rina, that the mountains and the valleys shall sing for you with joyfully. V'chol atzei hasadeh yimcha uchaf, and all of the trees of the field will yimcha uchaf. What does yimcha uchaf mean? They will clap their hands. They will applaud you. That's what Yimcha Uchaf means. We say this in Kabbalah Shabbos. In the Lechu Neranana. Yeram Hayom Umla'o, the pasuk in the kapitel Tzadi Ches in Tehillim describes all of nature celebrating together because Shabbos is coming. And it says, Naharos Yimcha Uchaf Yachad Harim Yiranenu. The rivers all applaud, and together all of the mountains sing. So you see that applause or clapping hands is also a sign of great celebration. Lifnei Hashem kiva lishpot haaretz, because God is coming to judge the world. Yishpot tevel betzedek v'yamim v'meisharim. He will judge the world righteously and all of the nations with an uprightness. We also have in Sefer Melachim, when King Yehoash is coronated after this very sordid attempt to wipe out his entire family line, it says, Vayaku chaf, everyone clapped hands and said, may the king live. So, the only observation that I have to make is that when you notice that there's a different verb being used, when you want to clap your hands in mourning versus when you want to clap your hands in celebration. Both of them, anthropologically, are signs of emotional expression. But one is an expression of sadness and frustration, and the other one is an expression of joy. Why are the two used as the same thing? So here's my suggestion. It's only a suggestion. If you notice, when the Torah describes clapping hands out of frustration, like Balak is vayispoket kapav, the word l'sapek means to supply. When you supply your hands. So that's literally what it means to supply your hands. Why is it called supplying your hands? Because you're putting one hand into the other hand and supplying it with something to hold on to. And I would suggest that the reason for clapping or clasping your hands like that is an expression of, I've done enough damage with these hands. Let me fill them up before they do any more damage. That's to be l'sapek et hakapayim. To l'sapek is to provide for. Let me fill these hands so that nothing worse can happen. Do you understand? That's the idea of Balak Sapeket Kapav, because he just wants to say, enough. I'm so frustrated. Everything's gone wrong. Enough. Right? And the same thing is true with that story of Lemech, why he's trying to, clap his hands. Unfortunately, that was actually did more damage. But that the expression of Lisapek et HaKapai means to sort of stop the hands from doing any more damage. Everything's gone wrong, and I just want to stop it already. To be moche et HaKaf, yimcha uchav. What does it mean, limchot? Macha.
To protest.
It could be to protest, but umacha Hashem dima. That what does that mean? God will wipe away, to erase. So when you want to erase the palm, what does it mean to erase a palm? What you're essentially, when you're in a period of celebration, the reason you clap your hands is to demonstrate that I don't need my hands anymore. I lack for nothing. So my hands are unnecessary. I can wipe off my hands, so to speak, because I've got everything I need. I don't need to do any more. So one is an expression of frustration that, stop it already, I don't want to do any more damage. Let me fill up my hands so I can't do anything more that would be even worse. And to be mochet hakapayim, which is almost this very same action, but it is an expression of, I am so sublimely complete and whole at this point, I lack for nothing, and so therefore my hands are not needed for me to do any more, and therefore I can applaud. Of course, there's the idea of making noise as a sign of celebration, but I think that this was what the idea of moche means. So there are noisemakers and there are noisemakers, and we have to know when it's appropriate to make the proper noise and when to make the wrong kind of noise. And it could be, and I'm just saying this b'torat efshar, it could be just as a possibility. There's an interesting halacha in Shulchan Aruch that the Ramah brings down in the laws of Tefillah, which is in section with source number 7. It's in Siman Tzadi Aleph. It's in the 91st chapter of the Shulchan Aruch, where the Ramah writes, "Uve'ed za'am yesh lechabek hayadayim b'shat tefillah." He says, at times of distress, when you feel that there's oppression or persecution taking place, when you stand in the midst of prayer, especially when you're davening Shemona Esrei, you should be mechabek hayadayim. You should hug your hands together like this. And the reason is, bishat tefillah ka'avda kamei marei, because you want to demonstrate like you're a servant in the presence of his master. When you hold your hands together like this, you're basically suggesting, there's nothing for me to do until you, Hashem, command me to do so. There's nothing that I can do. We're in a terrible situation. We're powerless. And therefore, I put my hands together as sort of an act of submission to you, Hashem. There's nothing more for me to do. It is an expression of, not frustration in this situation, but also an expression of powerlessness. To show that these hands, which are usually so effective at getting things done, there's nothing more for them to do. He says, and then, uve'et shalom yesh lihitkashet bivgadim na'im litpalel. When things are going great, of course, then you want to show how you want to honor God for providing you with so much blessing, so then you should wear nice clothes. So it all depends upon how things are going in your life. But when it's an Eit Sarah, when it's a time of distress, a time of peril, so then, yesh lechabek et hayadayim, you should hold your hands together. So just wanted to present that idea to you. We should always, hopefully, Bezrat Hashem, be able to clap our hands in celebration. Have a wonderful few weeks of the summer. We look forward to seeing you soon.